recording? Okay, good. And well, you're a class in philosophy of science or something like this, I thought. Yes, am I correct?
This is a philosophy seminar within a program of scientific education.
I see. Okay.
And yeah, and so yeah, there is a branch, if you want, of scientific education that is connected with philosophy of science, broadly speaking, and philosophy of sciences, and how they contribute to science literacy and science education, and this branch of the discipline is connected with the seminar.
I see.
So, as I was saying, it's a great honor to present you, Professor Psarros. I don't know if I studied nuclear chemistry, have a PhD in nuclear chemistry, and then he worked, correct me if I'm wrong, with nuclear waste management. And
also, yes, as a part of my, yes, when I was a chemist, yes, a little bit, yes.
And then it moved to philosophy, and I understand your philosophy thesis was the first accepted philosophy thesis in chemistry or philosophy of chemistry, and you are like a founder of the discipline of philosophy of chemistry, not only in Germany but more or less worldwide. So it's really an honor to have you here, and thank you for speaking about the nature of chemistry and the chemistry of nature.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I'm not a founder. I think it was after many years, one of okay. I presented a thesis in philosophy of chemistry and philosophy of science. So yes, it's a long time ago anyway. And perhaps also another nice coincidence is that this semester I'm giving a seminar on, perhaps radical constructivism of Humberto Maturana and Francesco Varela, so two famous Chilean philosophers anyway. So it's nice to have also this connection. Now I'm going to give you also a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to make this sharing of the. So you see my presentation, I hope.
We can see it, yes.
Okay, perfect. So
would you like, sorry, just to know, would you like us to ask you for clarification questions, or
I would prefer to answer the questions at the end, if it's if you don't mind. If you have an understanding, if you can't understand me, then you may interrupt me. But okay. Personally, I prefer to go through to my presentation, and then okay, then let's have questions after that. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So we go. So as perhaps you know, the title is The Chemical Realm of Nature and the Nature of Chemistry. So it's about nature and about science, to say so. Yes. So oops, how is it? Okay. No, I see. Okay, so it's okay. So my presentation is going to have, so to say, 7 parts. In the first part, I'm going to talk a little bit about the nature of science, what science is, and the nature of nature. Yeah. And the second part, I'm going to speak about formed and formless things, or form and formlessness. Then the third part, it's going to deal with the natural and the artificial. Then follow the realms of nature, or the domains of nature. Then the fifth part is going specifically then to the chemical, to say so, part of nature, so about the characteristic features of the chemical things and the processes. Chemical things, I mean what we call chemical substances and so on. Yeah. And then I'm going to talk about the constitutions of the epistemic objects of chemistry. That is, the objects that the science of chemistry is exploring, and yes. And at the end, about the research program of chemistry. So as you see, I mean, I'm going, this may remind you of topics in philosophy of science, for example, what a research program is, or about the distinction between natural and artificial. So there are classical distinctions. I'm not going to present you yet here with a completely new, philosophical theory of philosophy, to say so. Okay, so that is, I am draining from classical sources, like, for example, Aristotle or Lakatos at the end. Okay, so let's begin about the nature of science and the nature of nature. So chemistry, well, this is obvious, belongs to the so-called sciences of nature, or natural sciences. Therefore, in order to understand the nature of science, that is what chemistry is, we have first understand the character of science, what science is, and then the character of nature, to say so. If we are going to understand that chemistry is a science of nature. So let's begin with science. Science is an enterprise, an intellectual enterprise aiming at a better understanding of the world that we experience in our daily life by revealing the reasons that it appears as it appears. I think this is a very old definition of science, going back to the antiquity. Yes, we have to try it as thinking beings, to say so, as rational beings. We are trying to understand why the situation is as it is, why the things are like they are, why they appear so like they appear, and so on and so forth. And so the aim of science, to rephrase it, is to reveal and explore the structures and laws that are, in a sense, hidden in its thing and in its change that occurs in the world. Yeah. So the objects of science are then always dependent on something that can exist independently of scientific explanation. That means we just do not say invent science, or science is not just a product of our imagination or of our will or whatsoever, but the science refers to things that already exist, that we are acquainted with: animals, other people, or stones, the weather, anything. Yeah, you know. So, and that means that science does not create a separate world of scientific objects, but rather organizes the actual life world, that is the world in which we live, the normal world, in what I would call epistemic domains. So we create the, as I said, regions. We'll say, okay, this we're going to explore in a methodical way also, in order to understand why the things are as they are. So let's go then to the nature, to the concept of nature. Nature has many meanings. First of it is the essence of something, the what it is, the nature of something. Yeah, we say I don't know, the nature of democracy is, for example, the participation of the people in political reasoning and so on and so forth, and having certain rights, etc. Yeah, something like that. And also, on the other hand, nature is a domain of our life world. That is the part of the world that is not created by us, exists on its own account, and is the ground on which everything exists, and the source that of everything that exists by its own account. Yeah, that is, we have two meanings. Nature means, first, to say so, the structure or the form of the things that we somehow explore. So, and the other meaning is what we call nature, in the sense that you go into the nature for a hiking, or everything that exists by itself is also nature. Okay, so and so that means that perhaps the science of nature explores, to say so, the essence of the things that exist by their own account. So in order to understand now what exactly the science of nature somehow explores, also, we have to think, we have to start we have to make a distinction in the world between formed things, things that have a form, and things that are formless. It's very important because the science aims at the revealing and the exploration of what we call a form. So we begin science when we explore things that are constituted in a certain way, okay, and exist in a certain way. Before I do this, I'm going to introduce two concepts, the concept of equity and the concepts of quiddity. This can be introduced in this way, that, its existence somewhere occurs at a given point in space of time, and it manifests itself as something, yeah? That is, imagine a cat, I don't know, a llama, anyway, something, a fish. It exists in space and time, and it's something. It's a kind of fish, it's a kind of animal, a person, or even a glass of water. So its single thing that exists is characterized by its so-called equity and the quiddity. Equity refers to the thatness, that is, that it is there, and quiddity refers to its whatness, what it is. So every existing thing, or all existing things, share the same equity. They are here and now, okay? But the quiddities are different, the what it is. And with respect to the quiddity, this distinction between formed and formless things is made. So there are formless things, which means that there are things that have a quiddity that can be attributed to the part, that is, the parts of a thing are of the same quiddity of the whole. As example, a cloud. If you divide a cloud into two, say, parts, then you get two clouds. Okay, and if you cut them also, if you divide them, you get another two clouds, and so on and so forth. I mean, there is a limitation. At a certain point, you can't see a cloud anymore, also. But in a sense, there is no end in dividing a cloud. You get always clouds. So the parts of a cloud is a cloud itself, or the part of a pile of sand is itself a pile of sand. So those things I call formless, because what they are somehow is, in a sense, not defined by itself. Somehow it's given, and perhaps at this point I should stress that we should not confuse form with shape. That is, there are clouds that have the shape of, say, I don't know, sheep or a bird or whatsoever, or there are stones that have the shape of an animal or something like that. Oh, I see there is a. Okay. I'm sorry, there are comments, but I'm going perhaps to comment the comments later on. Yeah. So okay. So as there is a class also of existences in the world that fulfill this condition. So those things I call formless. This doesn't mean that they have an appearance, that is a shape. They look like, I don't know, something. But this doesn't mean that they have a form in this sense. Yeah, this is so. On the other hand, sorry. What's happening here? Sorry. So on the other hand, we have the form things, and those things I define as the things, existences, the quiddity of which cannot be attributed to their parts. For example, animals or chemical substances, atoms or artificial objects like cars or marks or houses. If we divide or cut, say, so an animal, we get the parts of an animal, but the parts of an animal are not animals by themselves. An animal does not consist of animals, to say so. Yeah, it consists of organs, perhaps, or of cells or whatsoever, but it does not belong to the same category of existence. Okay, and the same holds for chemical substances. In a sense, if a chemical substance is divided, you get not the same chemical substance. The parts of water are not water, to say so, a hydrogen or an oxygen, and so on and so forth. And also artificial objects like cars or marks, for example, are constituted the same way. if you shred if you let a glass fall, you get shards, but the shards are not glasses by themselves also. So this is the main difference. Obviously, this distinction between formless and formed things is only ideally absolute. That is, nothing in the world is, to say so, perfect manifestation of a form, and nothing also in the world is formless in itself. And there's a relation between formed and formless, which I called supervenience. That is, the form supervenes on the formlessness. Yeah. You can see it, for example, let me see, explain it. If you look at Plato's Timaeus, this is this dialogue about the constitution of the world, to say so, then at some point, Timaeus explains how the relation between matter and somehow in form is constituted, and says, look, if you prepare an ointment, you get a perfume, and the perfume is volatile, so it can't stay, so you need to fix it, and you use a substrate, a material, and this material takes, to say so, the odor of this perfume, and so on and so forth, and so you fix it, and you get an ointment also, something like this. So, with respect, to say so, to the odor of this perfume, this substrate is formless, and it gets its form with the interaction, to say so, with this oil or whatsoever it is. So this quality, this of the perfume supervenes on this substrate, in a sense, yeah. And the relation between the formless and the formed is privative, in the sense that the formless has no form, to say so. It doesn't possess this characteristic, or this property of being a whole, something that consists of parts, to say so, that are constitutive to it. So, so this means that there is also a necessary relation between form and formless material, which means that the formless material somehow has to accept, in a sense, form that is imposed on it, and these relationships explain the fact that, as I said, every existing thing that is formed is, to say so, always affected by some degrees of formlessness. And also the fact that every formless thing displays some form with respect, for example, to its materiality. The latter means, as I said, clouds are formless, but they consist of water. That is, in a sense, they have a form, but their form is not the form of the object itself, a cloud, but the form is the form of the material, water. On the other hand, for example, if you look at a certain animal, the animal expresses a form, say a cat, but always there are differences. Not every cat is identical to every other cat. There are differences between them that are somehow due to chance, or, for example, a cat or another animal can be ill, or it can be malnutrition whatsoever. So those missing things, those privations, to say so, it's a kind of formlessness that somehow is mixed with the form of an existing thing, which means, as I said, that every existing thing is a kind of mixture between form and formlessness. And this is very important when we are going to constitute, to say so, the objects of science, because the objects of science are pure forms, or are pure formed things, that is, or we try to produce them as purely formed things in a sense, yeah. Okay, this is a thing that I'm going just in order for completeness to say there are not only formed and formless things, but also processes that are formed and formless. Formed processes are processes that, say so in normal talk, obey to a natural law. For example, the trajectory of a satellite or so is a formed process. Yeah, this movement in orbit or whatever, the orbits of the planets are formed processes. Okay, chaotic processes are formless. Good. Now, perhaps a philosophical question. It's in a parenthesis here. You may ask, how do we know that there are forms? I mean, this is an old philosophical question. Okay, there are people who say there are forms and we know of them. The others say, no, there are not forms there. We don't know about forms, but we create them. And the problem is, how do we know that there are forms if we think that we don't create the forms as a result of our intellectual activity? I think this the latter idea is a little problematic. So I think that there are forms, in a sense, that the forms exist independently of our knowledge of them or not. And this is I think this is also the foundation of science. Science relies on the fact that the forms exist. It does not invent them or does not just mere construct them. So I'm not in this sense, I'm not a constructivist. Okay. So, and I think there are many efforts to give an answer to this question, which all of these efforts are not very successful, perhaps, and perhaps also my ideas are also not very successful. But I think the best account of our knowledge of forms is that we have an immediate knowledge of one form, and this is our form, the human form. That is, every human being, in a sense, not only manifests the human form, but at least we know it. This doesn't mean that we have an explicit knowledge about that, and this is not true, because we were born, in a sense, we have no knowledge, no explicit knowledge of anything. Well, our mind is tabula rasa, as it's said, yeah. But somehow there must be the kind of foundation in this, because during our lives, somehow we refine, in a sense, this knowledge about what it is to be a human being. So we have, in a sense, a direct and immediate result, a direct and immediate knowledge of our form, and this is a direct and immediate result of the activity of our intellect. That is, the intellect is something that somehow knows from the beginning of its existence that it is formed, it's a formed thing. Even if it doesn't know what the content of this form is, that is what it means exactly, yeah, to be an intellect or an thinking being whatsoever. So, and this is shown by humans by the mastering of the personal pronouns. Therefore, I call also the human form also the form of I. When we use the personal pronouns, we don't use them only in order to refer to say so indexically or to the position of things in space and time and so on and so forth, but to say so the pronoun I or the I is also a predicate of us. Perhaps you know German philosopher Fichte, who coined to say so the formula I am I, to say so, yeah, also ich bin ich. And this is not a tautology, but this is to say so a synthetic judgment, which means to the subject I, we predicate the predicate I am an I. And we see that it's the case because we use the other pronouns in the same sense. A you is not only something different, but it's another I. And therefore we can infer from, say, I'm talking to you, that in a sense, you are listening to me. Okay, so it's not only so that you're just the receivers of my voice, in a sense, say a microphone or whatsoever that converts it to electrical signals and so on and so forth. But when I am saying something, I'm pronouncing, to say so, an idea or a meaning whatsoever. And when you're listening to me, you receive this, and in a sense, you understand me. So this you is not to say so another I when we use it. Also, in the same sense, when we use the other pronouns, or when I say hit a person, I know that I hurt a person or the other person. And this is the difference between us and, say, other animals. Perhaps, for example, when my cat is chasing a mouse, okay, she understands perhaps that the mouse is running away, but she does not understand that the mouse is afraid of the cat, of this cat, that he somehow is hunting. I mean, you can see it in the behavior of the animals if you have cats or so, something like that. Yeah, they in a sense, they do not understand what they're doing. Okay, so this immediate knowledge of the form of I is, to say so, the basis of our knowledge of forms, and is also the basis of science. So let's go now to the next distinction between natural and artificial. As I said, we're going to try to understand what chemistry is and not dwell on those highly metaphysical topics about forms and the I and so on and so forth. So things and processes, I call them collectively as occurrences. We can distinguish them into classes, in a sense, yeah. So there are forms of formed occurrences that bear themselves the reason of their quiddity, that is their form, yeah. Excuse me? No, okay. And this is called, this is a natural thing or a natural process whatsoever that bears its form in itself. The paradigmatic case of a natural occurrence is the living animal. Okay, the living thing, an animal or a plant or a bacterium or whatsoever, bears, to say so, its quiddity in itself and gives it to its offspring by itself. So on the other hand, there are occurrences that receive the reason of their quiddity from an external agent. For example, a statue or an artifact. Okay, there are the so-called artificial occurrences or artificial things. So the artificial is something that's formed by an external source, an agent, us, for example, and a natural thing is a thing that's formed by itself. It bears the reason of its form in itself. And the funny thing is, like, the relationship between formed and formless things, that in the real world, almost all things that we encounter, in a sense, are a mixture of natural and artificial aspects. That is, there's nothing that is completely artificial, and in a sense, there's also not a pure nature, at least with respect to thinking beings like us. I mean, obviously, say so, looking at the telescope and observing a far galaxy, far away, and so on and so forth, yeah, we don't see there's anything artificial. Galaxy is a natural thing, but on the other hand, the fact that we categorize those things into galaxies, star clusters, I don't know what. It is not in themselves somehow, and also the way we conceive them, we perceive them, we present them, and so on and so forth, is not in themselves. So even something like a galaxy or whatsoever has a small amount of artificiality, in a sense, yeah. And the more this holds, the more to the objects of our say so life world, because everything there, even an animal or a plant whatsoever, has to say so or possesses a natural aspect, that is its quiddity. Yeah, donkey is a donkey, but in a sense, the donkey in my yard, okay, is something artificial, because, to say so, the natural, perhaps, habitat of a donkey is not my yard. No? The donkeys are animals that somehow have been domesticated by humans, and somehow they have been modified artificially to something which is not anymore pure donkey whatsoever. Yeah, so something like that. So everything is a mixture of that. So in the world, there is not so to say a strict limit or strict delimitation or a border between the nature and the non-nature. Okay, it's not so that to say so when you're living the city, you are going to, I mean, we say we're going to the nature, but in fact, we are not going to the nature. We're going to a part of the world that perhaps is more natural than our cities or whatsoever. Okay. So, okay, yeah, this is what I said, yeah. So perhaps an interesting thing that I'm not going to discuss further here, unless you have an interest in it, is that the relation between artificial and natural is augmented. That is, the artificial somehow enhances the natural. It's not privative. I think it's a wrong idea to think that the artificial somehow destroys the natural. It doesn't. I mean, it may affect it in a sense, but in another sense, it somehow enhances. It's augmentative. For example, well, when humans say domesticated plants, somehow they turn them. I mean, you cultivate them, you take care of them, and so on and so forth. You try to remove the parasites and enemies and so forth, and suddenly this plant flourishes. You have a nice, say, apple tree in your garden, or I mean, you groom your pets, or even, I mean, if you have a herd of a sheep and I don't know what. You take care of them, and somehow they flourish, they grow, and they are somehow perhaps they're more healthy than an animal in a wild form or so. Yeah. So the artificial somehow augments, enhances, to say so, the natural, which is, as I said, not always without problems, but it's another to say so another part of the discussion. So we have now defined what the natural is and what the artificial is, and as I say, we somehow speak about the natural aspects of the things as if they consisted, to say so, an independent domain, which is a kind of abstraction that we call nature. Yeah, the nature, to say so, is well, the domain of speaking about the natural aspects of the things. And traditionally, we divide this region of nature into three subdomains. Yeah, into three main domains. The first is the physical domain. For example, well, that consists of, normally we think of physical things like movement of bodies, or, you know, what we call perhaps, what is the object or the of physics in a sense, electricity, perhaps magnetism, you know, movements of bodies and so on and so forth, mechanics, statics, and whatsoever. Then there is the chemical domain. Okay, it's about substances and the changes of substances and such things. And the domain of life, I think you know what it is, the domain of life. There are living things and, well, the kinds of their existence. Now, we have a problem, obviously, when we try then, I mean, as I said, we have an intuitive approach to these domains of nature, those three domains. There are also some subdomains between them, but this is not our problem now. And now the problem is when if we're going to reflect upon those things, we need something like a clear delimitation, or at least more or less clear delimitation. That is, we have to define the boundaries between the three realms. Now, there are two, say so, in a sense, there are two prominent methods of delimitation of the boundaries of those domains. The one goes back to Aristotle. He defines those boundaries on the basis of the kinds of observable changes, which means he says, okay, we have a domain that is somehow dominated by changes like locomotion, that is the change of the place, yeah, or the increase or decrease in quantity, like when you fill a bucket with water or so, or when you put something to another thing, so increases in weight or whatsoever, or changes of aggregate states like melting, evaporation, and so on and so forth. So this is the idea of Aristotle about this, what we would call the physical domain. This is not the terminology of Aristotle, obviously, because Aristotle, when they use the word physis in ancient Greek, they mean more or less nature and not physics, in us, yeah, what we call physics. But this is a historical problem. What we call the chemical domain, Aristotle defines as changes of perceptible qualities like color or taste, consistency, density, and so forth, and processes of generation and corruption like fermentation of must to wine or combustion of wood, whatsoever. Yeah, those are, Aristotle calls it, well, okay, as I said, generation and corruption. He doesn't have a word for chemistry. The ancient Greeks didn't have a word for chemistry. And then we have at the end the domain of life, and this is defined by, according to Aristotle, by processes of growing and dwindling. That is, complex processes, well, like as I said, the birth of an animal, it's growing to ripening, to a full adult, then it reproduces, and then somehow it shrinks, gets older, and at the end dies. And those processes of life are complex processes, including processes of the first and the second domain or whatsoever. Yeah, we know that animals, for example, move around, somehow increase or decrease in quantity. Yeah, they're getting bigger and then perhaps heavier, like us, and so on and so forth. However, this demarcation is not very good for modern science because it doesn't allow the constitution of the specific objects of inquiry that needs modern science like physics, chemistry, and biology. And this is so because, first of all, many things can change in more than one way. For example, as I said, animals move around and change their weight or volume, for example, by accident, by eating less or eating more, whatsoever. Materials can be changed by application of, on the other hand, materials, that is, substances, can be changed by application of mechanical force. For example, if you forge iron to steel, yeah, if you hammer it on the forge, you apply mechanical force on the material, on the hot iron, and this has a chemical change as an effect. This forging, this hammering, is not only bringing into shape this piece of iron, but it creates the steel in a sense. So this Damascene swords, all those things that are created by forging are created because of the application of mechanical force on a chemical substrate. Yeah. Or, for example, explosions when you shoot. I mean, okay, it's perhaps not a no, you hit, to say so, in the bullet, in the casing. Yeah, there is a small amount of a substance called mercury fulminate, which explodes upon the impulse. So the cock hits, to say so, this point, and then it explodes and then ignites, to say so, the powder in the casing, and it propels the bullet. Okay, so we have a mechanical, to say so, movement that somehow has an effect, chemical changes. And also life processes are affected by physical and chemical changes. I mean, yeah, we can be poisoned, or I don't know, perhaps or getting better by taking some medicine whatsoever, or as I said, we can be hurt by mechanical processes, break something, and so on and so forth. And also the concept of oh, sorry. So this is a problem here. Anyway, also the concept of Aristotelian chains does not allow for the quantitative mathematical treatment that is somehow necessary in modern sciences. It's a problem because Aristotle was somehow not a very fond of mathematics, or Aristotle was of the opinion that mathematics have nothing to nothing to lose in natural science, and mathematics is something of an affair of techniques, to say so. Masons, engineers, and so need mathematics, but they are not natural scientists. They create things for humans, and measuring something like that is something that applies only to the human, say so, form of life, and not to the natural form of life. So Aristotle was against the mathematical treatment of nature. This is one of the points of say so friction between say so the Aristotelians and the Platonic scientists. And in the modern times, in the Renaissance, the transition from the geocentric to the heliocentric, for example, worldview, was also a transition from this Aristotelian anti-mathematical treatment of nature to the Platonic mathematical treatment of nature. Galileo somehow was well changed, or it was turned from an Aristotelian to a Platonist, well, because he somehow had insight that mathematics are necessary to understand nature. Yeah? And so Galilean mathematics, Galilean physics are purely mathematical, while Aristotelian physics, well, have no mathematics at all. I mean, there is a mixture in Ptolemaic physics, but as I said, that's another problem again. So the flaws of this Aristotelian demarcation somehow have been remedied by Hegel's definition of the boundaries, and Hegel uses the relation between the thing and the process. And so he says, when thing and process exist separately and interact additively or by superposition, then we have constituted the physical domain, which means in the physical domain you have the objects and you have the processes, that is the theoretical movements, and somehow they come together and they create configurations of bodies in space, to say so, that change in time. So what changes at this level is not the body itself, but the whole configuration. Okay, for example, if you take the solar system, if you remove a planet, the planet is not affected by this removal, but the solar system is affected, to say so. So the chemical process, on the other hand, is the process and thing ordered in this way that the process creates or annihilates the thing, and the thing stops or initiates the process. But process and thing cannot interact, which means, for example, if you have, say, must and it ferments to wine, it's so that when the fermentation process commences, at each time slice, at each time bin, to say so, a certain portion of must is converted to wine, yeah, and it disappears, and in its place a certain amount of wine is manifested or is created, and when the must is turned to wine, then the process of fermentation stops. Okay, wine is marked, or the appearance of wine marks the stop of the fermentation process. But process and thing do not interact. They are connected in a serial manner, in a serial way. So in the domain of life, on the other hand, the process creates the thing and preserves its existence, and at the same time, the thing keeps upright the process that creates it. It's a similar thing. Yeah, we have our life process is so that creates us and preserves us, and we always have somehow to keep upright our life process, for example, by eating whatsoever, or breathing or whatsoever. Yeah. So now we coming to the characteristic features of chemical things and processes. We are somehow concerned with this middle domain, yeah, with this chemical domain. So that is with this serial order of thing and process. And so in order to understand then how this can happen, there have to be some conditions have to be met of the object. That is, the first condition is the homogeneity. That is, the properties that are relevant to the manifestation of a chemical process have to be distributed in the volume occupied by a given chemical thing in such a manner that their qualitative and quantitative values are constant at any point of this volume, at any place. And this is so because chemical processes relate to chemical things in this serial manner, in the sense that a chemical process either causes the existence of a chemical thing, or a chemical thing initiates a chemical process. And for this to happen, it is necessary that a chemical process can take place at any point of space in its volume occupied by a given chemical thing, and that the process can begin at the same time at every point of a volume occupied by a given chemical thing. Again, fermentation of must to wine, it's so that this fermentation must somehow, by definition or by its concept, be able to take place at every point of space in its volume. So there is no, in a volume of must, there is not a place that is not affected or cannot be affected by fermentation, for example. Yeah. And also a chemical process must then come to an end when the change has taken place in every point of the volume occupied by the given chemical thing. So chemical things have to be homogeneous in order to participate in this game of generation and corruption of these chains of their properties. Homogeneity does not entail isotropy. That means that the speed of this process must not be uniform in various directions. So this another thing is isotropy, and another thing is homogeneity. Now, a chemical thing then is a volume of matter that display a homogeneous distribution of the qualitative and quantitative values of some properties like color, density, and so on and so forth. And such properties are can be homogenized. We call material properties of the thing. That is, material properties are properties that can be homogenized. And this is also a corollary. So that means that material properties are by their nature expressed in intensive magnitudes and not in extensive magnitudes. So, and then this means also that the boundaries of a chemical things are always determined by another chemical thing with different properties, or by empty space, what we call empty space or vacuum, which means, for example, if I have, say, this glass of water, yeah, the water is confined by the glass. So the boundaries of the body of the water are determined by the surface of the inner surface of this glass, yeah, or by the air, by to say so, the empty space, and which means also then that is what we call empty space or vacuum is not an abstract geometrical volume that has no material properties at all, despite the fact that the material properties of a vacuum are very specific. So the vacuum itself is not a chemical thing or a physical body, but it's to say so the medium or that encompasses any material manifestation and in which then changes of any kind can take place. So another consequences of the definition of the chemical thing is that the chemical aspect of a thing supervenes on the physical, which means that every chemical thing relies on a configuration of the underlying physical entities, for example, the atoms. And every chemical process involves the reconfiguration of those entities, okay? Which means then that the chemical change does not affect the specific properties of those entities. When, to say so, a chemical substance is changes to another chemical substance, as I said, what changes are, to say so, the properties of the chemical object and not the properties of the atoms. The atoms do not, they are just rearranged, okay? So, for example, when oxygen and hydrogen combine to form water, the atoms of oxygen and hydrogen do not disappear. They are still there. They are there in another. They enter another relation among themselves. Okay, and this compound or this compound configuration that then emerges is the water. So the form of the water relies, to say so, on the rearrangement of the atoms of oxygen and hydrogen, and which means, to say so, what disappears? It disappears the form of the forms hydrogen and oxygen. That is, the two gases that have different properties and so on and so forth. They disappear, and in their place water emerges. So the change is about affects, to say so, the chemical forms and not the material substrate of that. And this is also the meaning of the so-called law of the conservation of mass, which means, because the mass refers, to say so, to a property of the underlying entities, to say so. And so a chemical process means also that can be initiated by an interaction between the underlying entities caused by physical change. As I said, friction can cause the ignition or the explosion of a chemical thing. You know that. I mean, if you rub two pieces of wood, then you can create a fire, for example. Or a rise in the temperature can initiate the formation of iron from iron ore and coal. Now you make a hot fire, and then you put iron ore on coal that is burning, and then, okay, you get iron out of it. Or an electric spark can initiate a combination of hydrogen and oxygen to water, and so on and so forth. And it's important now to notice that these underlying changes do not determine the form of the chemical process, but they are solely the effective cause of these chemical things and the processes. Yeah. So, okay, now we have, to say so, this phenomenal, to say so, objects of the chemical domain, and we step further now to the constitution of the epistemic objects of chemistry, that is, the object that chemistry explores. And as I said, the aim of the science of chemistry is to reveal, to say so, the laws that determine the form of the chemical things and the processes. So in order to achieve this, chemistry, as every other science, must constitute its epistemic objects from the basis, that is, from the foundations that is provided by the plethora of chemical things and processes that somehow make up our daily life, our world, life world, to say so. And so the constitution of the epistemic objects of chemistry is therefore not only the result of a contemplation, that is not just an abstraction process, as we're seeing, okay, we have this and this and this, and then somehow we set up some criteria and say, okay, if they fulfill those criteria, then we have this, I don't know what, chemical substance whatsoever, but it has to performed operatively. That is, we use techniques in order to create or to produce, to say so, the objects of chemistry, the epistemic objects of chemistry. And the first step is that we somehow create out of the, as I said, of the variety of the materials of the world, what I call chemical substances, which means we have to eliminate as much as it's possible, the formlessness of the chemical things. We have somehow to purify them. So we cannot rely on the criterion of homogeneity, because there are accidental properties that cannot also be homogenized. For example, salt and pepper. If you have a mixture of salt and pepper, you can grind it so finely that you have at least macroscopically homogeneous thing. So it's a gray powder whatsoever. But if we then dissolve it, or if you dissolve salt in water, you get also homogeneous material in life volume terms. But you can, to say so, decompose it in salt and water by vaporizing the water. Yeah, if you cook the water in the pan, then the salt remains back. I mean, it's but water and salt do not somehow are affected by such a treatment. For example, you can boil water and then you create steam, and then steam condensates to water, or you can freeze water to ice and then melt the ice to water, and so you have a circulation to say so across the states of aggregate that but that it's to say so reversible. Okay, you can, as I said, make steam out of a gas, out of liquid water, or a solid body out of this gas or the liquid water, and you can, to say so, turn this solid body into a gas or a liquid body, and so on and so forth. And the same holds also for salt. So such substances that under life world conditions display, to say so, this high degree of stability in the form can be regarded as a chemical substance. So we have a first criterion. Okay, so we have chemical substances are the basic epistemic objects of the science of chemistry. Here's also something important we have to take off, that is the criterion of conservation of homogeneity during those transitions. It's only phenomenological and does not define the nature of a chemical substance. That is, we know now that water is a chemical substance, but we still would not know what water is. It helps only to identify some chemical substances and to say so, paves the path, say so, to the scientific exploration whatsoever. So it's the beginning. The second step is to create, to say so, what we call chemically pure substances. That is, substances that are, to say so, consist only of their substance, in a sense. Yeah, that is, they are as formless as possible. And this, to say so, we need a criterion somehow to recognize that a chemical substance is so pure that is a chemically pure, as we call it in chemistry. And this criterion is a so-called constant temperature during aggregate state transitions. I don't know if you know it, but the first, to say so, control of the chemical purity of a thing is you let it melt and you check the temperature. And if while this melting process, the temperature remains constant, then you say, okay, you have a chemically pure substance of this. And in fact, we should also determine the temperature constancy also during the transition from the liquid to the vapor state, to the gaseous state. We don't do it under normal circumstances, but those transition points are fixed. So you can then determine if you have a chemically pure substance. Yeah. So, and this has to do with the criterion of homogeneity. That is, if a material is homogeneous with regard to its, say so, to its quiddity, then the aggregate state transition should be, to say so, homogeneous. That is, constant for every volume of the thing that undergoes those the transition. So this is a very old criterion, to say so, to determine the chemical purity of a substance. Then there are processes we call them chemical reactions that are take place under strict observance of the law of mass conservation that we call chemical reactions. I come to this later. And there are chemical substances that then cannot be further composed by chemical reactions, are called elementary substances. And those substances can appear, however, in the form of phenomenally different modes with different properties, like say diamond and graphite and whatsoever, yeah. And such elementary substances are then the allotropic modes of these chemical elements. So we, from the chemical substance, we come to the elementary chemical substance, okay, and then we come to the concept of the chemical element, and then the chemical elements are the fundamental epistemic objects of chemistry, and they are that are at the end of this series of material operative abstractions. Okay, so and for this we need, as I said, controlled processes or regulated processes, and we call them chemical reactions. And the chemical reactions are chemical processes that take place under the strict observance of this law of mass conservation. Then the next step is to determine the correlation between the chemical and the underlying domain of the physical. So, well, this is a historical evolution of this, the development. People, or the chemists, found out then that the chemical elements form families of similar chemical properties. They call them groups. Then the membership of an element in a group is a periodic function of the element's specific density in the gaseous aggregate state. From this, chemists have defined a magnitude, the so-called relative atomic weight. That is, they compared the ratio of the vapor of density of an element to the density of hydrogen. That is what we call atomic weight or molecular weight, is nothing else than the ratio of the density of the vapors of a chemical substance compared with the density of the vapor of hydrogen gas under certain conditions. This is the definition. Okay, then later it was refined anyway. So this enabled, to say so, to create a relationship between the element density, in the sense, and the chemical properties. And so it enabled the arrangement of the elements in a systematic manner that is known as the periodic table or the periodic system of the elements. And then after further empirical research, there was revealed a correlation between this vapor density, that is the atomic weight, and the structure of the atomic structure, that is the number of the protons. And so at the end, the result was that the quiddity, that is the what it is of each particular chemical element, is univocally characterized by the number of the protons in its atomic nuclei, that is the atomic number. So we know now that the element 1 is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the element 1, and helium is the element 2, which means what characterizes hydrogen as hydrogen is the fact that its atoms contain 1 proton. And what characterizes helium as helium is the fact that its atoms contain 2 protons, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have to say so univocal, to say so, relation between the number of the protons in the nuclei of the atoms of this element to the chemical properties. A little bit complicated how it's related, but this is to say so the essence of this idea. And so the periodic table of the elements is not only, to say so, the expression of the basic law that governs, to say so, the relation between the chemical things, but also governs the supervening relations between the chemical and the physical domains of nature. And at the end, we land to the research program of chemistry, which is to say, so formulates an axiom that says the totality of the chemical things are composed of chemical elements according to the laws of the affinities to other elements, that is, to their chemical properties. And so the empirical, to say so, task of chemistry is to discover those laws of the affinities of the elements to each other, and also combination of the elements, that is, of the chemical compounds to each other, and so on and so forth. Well, okay, this is not a philosophical task anymore, but instead, okay, it has to be conducted in a chemical laboratory, which we are not now allowed to enter without proper training and protective gear. And so, thank you for your attention, and we are now open for discussion. Thank you very much. So.
¿Te gustaría partir ustedes con tener algunas dudas? I know that there are some people that wrote things in the chat while you were along your talk, but
yeah.
If you don't mind, I would like to start with questions here, if you have any. If not, immediately we can. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to monopolize this. We can start with the chat if you don't.
Yeah, okay. There are two comments here. I'm going to ask to answer them.
Yeah, but there is a question here. If you don't mind, can I just
very good. Sorry for my English. Nicolas, I'm trying to find a proper translation. Maybe Diego could help me with terms like quiddity, aexity, and supervenience to the Spanish. What would be a possible translation if it's there one to terms like quiddity and halcity and supervenience? I have problems trying to find meaning in Spanish for that terms.
Well, okay. I mean, there are Latin terms, in fact, stemming from medieval philosophy, and Hecatus is from now, here, like that, and quidditas from what, yeah? So Latin terms, and Hecatus means to say so the here and now existence of something, yeah? And the quidditas is what it is. I mean, you can find them in classical scholastic philosophy. So I just use those terms, and in English they have been borrowed by philosophers like Quine, or so. He uses also those terms. I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I can't tell you the Spanish corresponding terms. In German, we use the Latin terms to say so, or you can use this English translations to thatness and whatness. I'm sorry, no, I can't help you here. And supervenience, okay, it's also a classical terms and means that something comes upon something else, so that it, to say so, relies on that is under it, but is not caused by it in a sense, yeah. So supervenience is used also in modern philosophy in order to explain the relationship between, say, spirit and brain whatsoever, or mind and brain, or so saying those spirit supervenes on, or mental processes supervene on neural process whatsoever, something like that. Yeah, this is the idea. So I'm sorry now about the translation in Spanish. I can help you.
As far as I know, there is none. Some superveniencia.
Ese sí, pero ahí no lo entiendo.
No, es que no se habla de quid y
¿Qué edad? ¿Qué edad? No.
Claro. Pero entendiste más o menos.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I don't know, in normal colloquial Spanish, if you use the word, perhaps it has another meaning. It could be, yeah. So I think you have to look it in a dictionary, something like that. I mean, you will find out what it is. Anyway, those terms, you can use them as say so technical terms, and use them in the Latin form. So then you have the difference to colloquial Spanish and whatsoever. and I just define them to say so. Okay.
¿Tiene alguna otra duda? No? Would you like to go to the chat and perhaps see what?
One says, there was the first comment that it's a human intellectual construct. It does not necessarily exist beyond the human species. Well, I don't claim that in a sense, at least on Earth, it does not exist beyond the human species. But, well, I don't think that it's just a construct, because if it were a construct, then somehow the idea of truth would not apply to it. So somehow science claims to provide true knowledge or make true statements about the things, and not just mere logically consistent statements or whatsoever. I mean, this is also a debate among philosophers and philosophers of science, but I do not believe that science is just a construct. It's a human enterprise, like everything we do. Okay, it's a human enterprise, it's a human practice, and so on and so forth. But it's not a construct in this sense. It's, because it has a meaning, yeah, and the meaning is not only for us. It's not to say so. Science is not something that we do in order just to have a happy life or whatsoever. But we think we learn something about the world. We have we gain a theoretical insight into the world. Not only just we don't have just a utilitarian stance to science. Okay. Because if this were the case, then there would be no necessity to say so, to give up, say, the geocentric worldview, because we are in the middle of the universe. So we are going to lose it. Okay, I mean it makes no sense. Yeah. Okay, we could stick to it, but Galileo, for example, or so, thought that his system, his heliocentric system, was the true description of the world as it is, and in fact that it was intended by God. I mean, Galileo's main argument or main incentive was to prove that it to say so, to give the true theological explanation of the world, or to give a theologically valid and true interpretation of nature, in a sense. So it's not just a construct. So the other comment,
and it is connected with the difference between shape and form that perhaps is more explicit in your text, and you mentioned.
Okay, so clouds as objects are formless. As I said, the clouds consist of water, or clouds consist of something else, ammonia, I don't know what. I mean, you know, a lot of kinds of clouds. But as an object, a cloud is in a sense formless, in at least with respect, say, to an animal or so. There are many formless things on Earth. I mean, it's not a problem. It's not a shame to be formless. For example, mountains are also formless. They have a shape. Okay, there is a mountain shape, but I mean, if you divide a mountain range, then you get two mountain ranges. If in future, say, the Andes somehow are cut in the middle by an earthquake, then you get two mountain ranges of the Andes, a northern one and the southern, separated by a valley or whatsoever. I don't know, but I mean, the thing that we call a mountain is also a formless thing, despite the fact that it consists of material, of minerals, of something. Yeah. So, so the definition is just a meteorological definition of the formless and the formed here, and not a material definition. Okay, so I think this is perhaps in order to clarify the distinction, and we we need it because science is concerned with things that have this kind of internal structure. Okay, so they're not things that do not have this kind of internal structure. There's not a science of heaps of piles or whatsoever. It doesn't exist. Okay.
If there's no other questions, I have questions. So
yes,
I'm puzzled by the role of humans in this knowledge of form. You mentioned that we humans have like a rather obscure but innate notion of form.
yeah.
And let me quote you because you said at some point. Let me see. Right. Sorry. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Therefore, the human's form must be known in a way that is completely independent from the content of any perceptions or from any other mediated experience. And I'm puzzled by two things here. One, I'm not completely sure if evidence actually support this, because there are some sociological experiment with after the war, for instance. Anyway, or with orphans. Anyway. I have some doubts about the claim, but also I'm not completely sure about the function of this in your proposal and how you pass from okay, let's assume that you are right and we have an innate kind of knowledge of our form as humans. Then how we pass from that to the knowledge of other forms? Like how do we bridge this epistemic gap?
I see. Okay, I understand. Okay, how well? Because then it is so. Somehow let's put it so. Obviously, without other human beings, this is well, in a sense a metaphysical argument. Without other human beings that have a more precise knowledge about what it means to be a human, we would not come to any concept. That is, this means that we rely on other humans in order to become humans. Yeah. In this kind of intellectual humanity. But the idea is why we are so eager to say so to study nature. And we're eager to study nature because of this kind of knowledge. We approach everything in the world from the aspect of its form. And this we do it also in our daily life. We address the things always by their form name. We say, well, you are a cat, or you are an elephant, or you are a glass. I don't know what. You are a car, a computer, whatsoever. That is, somehow we address. We regard the world from the viewpoint of this universality of the form, and not from the viewpoint of this singularity. And this has to do with our intellectual constitution. I think we are somehow, okay, let's put it so, made to do so. It's our nature. Our nature is so. So I mean, this argument may sound circular in a kind of it's circular. That is, it cannot be proven, or it's a kind is petitious. Yeah. So I say that something is, and somehow it's begging to say so for you know for the proof or whatsoever, but it's not fallacious in the sense because well, we need a point to start, and in every I mean, if you take every point of start, another starting point, you get into the same problems. For example, if you take the Humean starting point, say, okay, we have impressions, and impressions somehow flow, and then we create something like via memory or whatsoever, somehow ideas or whatsoever. You have the same problem to understand, well, how we do it in the one way and not in the other way, when the flow of impressions is just also, in a sense, without any structure. Of if you take the Carnapian idea, I mean, Rudolf Carnap had a similar idea. How is this constituted the objects of science? So you always say, so come to a point to somehow to stipulate that somehow there is I don't know what, a nucleus of order in all those things. And I taking this Thomistic approach that says, okay, look, we are in a sense beings that regard the world from the standpoint of the universal and not of the standpoint of the particular, okay? And because we do this, we regard every particular as a manifestation of something universal. And this, the incentive to this cannot stem from any other source than from ourselves. It's not so that when we are born, someone is coming to us, say, I don't know who, God or anyway, and say, look, when you go out there, you have to do this and this. I mean, nobody told me that, and nobody told you that, okay? So somehow we bring this incentive, and I mean, and empirically, we observe it also with, well, little human beings. They always address the things by their form names. They say car, mama, I don't know what. And they are generalities. I mean, they don't address their mothers and fathers at the beginning as singularities, my father and my mother, but and therefore, for little children to say so, all the adults are mamas and papas, and I don't know what, okay? And somehow they learn then to distinguish between individual mamas and papas and people that are not mamas and papas, and so on and so forth. So it seems to be, I mean, it's just a phenomenological argument. I don't have any other to say so proof for this or whatsoever. And I think it works hermeneutically. It's just in order to explain why I begin with these distinctions and not with other distinctions. Okay, where I don't begin with, say, with a nominalist approach, say, okay, we have singularities and then we compare them and so on and so forth, like, as I said, in a Humean or in a Carnapian approach, okay? So, I mean, this is to say so, okay? Okay, this is my point, okay? My opinion. If you don't like it, I have also other opinions, but I'm not.
I wanted to understand better. Where was it? It wasn't clear for me, but now I got it. Thank you. I have one question. So if you don't, or others, there is someone in the chat apparently was saying that he was leaving.
Diego, cuando hables,
say something here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to say him something in Spanish. Diego, cuando hables, intenta hablarle directamente al micrófono de arriba, porque si no se escucha demasiado eco y no se entiende casi. Es difícil entender lo que está diciendo en cualquier idioma. Por si acaso. ¿Ya?
Gracias. No sé cómo leer. Someone, Kleeman?
Kleeman, yeah, this is, yeah, okay, for Ken, this is my colleague here. Yes. Yes, I'm going to read it.
If I don't speak directly to you, apparently it hurt very badly, and I cannot read backwards.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm going to read it. Okay, he says, thanks, okay, for the interesting thing. It was Scotistic. Okay, I'm a Scot. Okay, nevertheless. So the first thing is that the epistemic view in greater sense, epistemic domains, are thoughts from a combination of form and word. Aha. Do I not take? If I do so, how can there be a universality for them? Third, even if I follow that, what happened with evolution, not in the biological sense, more in mathematical, chaotic, physical sense. So in a sense of variation and selection, even to a chemical structure of epistemic substance. Okay, let me try to reformulate it in a, because I think Ken, this is the guy, means here that the epistemic domains consist not only, they are not just objective, okay, but somehow they are also expressed in terms, in words, that is, in concepts. So there is a mixture, to say so, of nature and logos. And I think, well, okay, the point is valid in a sense that, and this is also makes the, I think, all this discussion about science and so forth a little more complicated. Obviously, the fact that we are thinking beings in this sense somehow affects all this enterprise. That is, this is not a scientific enterprise. It's not just a normal life routine like other life routines perhaps we have, or like the life routines of say, other animals. Yeah, we know that animals have a life routine and they create, I don't know, nests, and then they raise their offspring, and somehow they have also emotions. They show also affinities, for example, like love or contempt or whatsoever. That is, they behave in a way. They like each other. They, in a sense, they love this. They are emotionally connected to their children, and so on and so forth. You know, there are animals that live in monogamy for their whole lives, whatsoever. It's everything that exists. But science is more than that. Science is more than just a life routine that is somehow connected by, say, auditory signals or whatsoever that we call talk whatsoever. Science is an enterprise that somehow is connected with our ability to form thoughts, which means it's our ability somehow not only to recognize forms, but somehow to reflect forms in our minds. This is also obviously an ability of the humans, okay? So, and to express them in words, which is part also of the evolution of science. The evolution of science, the historical evolution of science, is also an evolution of terminology, okay? We differentiate not only among concepts, but also among words, okay? So we create a terminology and so on and so forth, and we change also this terminology when science progresses and gets another view on the same thing. For example, in chemistry, up to the 18th century, there was something that was called phlogiston, which was something that people thought it exists, and it's the reason why things burn, for example. Okay, today phlogiston has no meaning, or we know what phlogiston was, what it was supposed to be, but no scientist of today uses this concept anymore. But excuse me, it doesn't fit anymore in our scientific system, in a sense. Yeah. So, and the second problem that Ken has is how can there be a universality for the words? Okay, that's another problem. How can we guarantee, to say so, that the concepts of science are universally valid? Well, in a sense, we cannot guarantee it. Well, I think, let's put it so, it's a matter of belief. In a matter of belief, like the firm faith that well, we think that it is so. Obviously, we have no empirical argument that our concepts, scientific concepts, can be universal in the sense that can be valid for another intelligence, for example. Or, okay, on Earth, perhaps there are some empirical or, I don't know, something like imperialistic ways to somehow pursue a certain concept of science and so forth, because I think on Earth all scientists well are members of the same scientific community, regardless, say, so of their political ideas and so on and so forth. Yeah, when the Chinese send a rover on Mars, they use the same science that the Americans use. And when the Emirates sent satellites to Mars, it's a fax I'm referring to, they used also the same science. So an Arab mathematician uses the same mathematics as a Chilean mathematician, and a Chilean biologist uses the same, to say so, biology as a biologist in South Africa or even. No? So in a sense. So factually, we have on Earth a kind of universality. But this is true. There is no theoretical possibility somehow to guarantee this universality. Is a matter of faith. And this has to do with the idea that intellect is something in itself universal, to say so. Okay, this remains to be proven. On the other hand, this is the main, I think, the main so the foundation of enterprises like SETI, this search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The people think when they're looking for signals from other planets, I don't know, from other civilizations, that somehow they will, well, transport in a sense the same message, at least the same scientific message. Okay, this may be, I don't know, naive or whatsoever, but I think this is also one of the foundations of science. And then, well, okay, this also has to do with the historical evolution. That is, I mean, in history of science and philosophy of science, there are people who say, okay, look, in fact, there is no continuity between the sciences. On the other hand, there is I think there is a continuity. That is, this thesis of incommensurability between, say, so the worldviews, between, say, the Aristotelian or the Ptolemaic and the Galilean worldview, and so on and so forth, that it's claimed, say, by people like Kuhn or whatsoever. Well, I don't think that it's true. I think that is a continuity. That is, there is an evolution of the concepts in history. This evolution is obviously not a straightforward one. On the other hand, there are connections. That is, first of all, we talk about the same world. That is, we, like Aristotle, we watch the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. We go to the sea and see fish, I don't know what, or animals, I don't know. Yes, in Chile or in Greece or in Kazakhstan or everywhere, and so on and so forth. And somehow we know that we share the same world. So even if our concept about the world changes, somehow it's this all those changes are mediated by the same kind of experience, of the same kind of worldly experience. So we can give an account not only of the change of the contents of the scientific aspects, but also of the chains. And so we can write the history, for example, of science. We can say, well, look, at the beginning was Aristotle, he said this and this and this, and then came this guy Ptolemy, who had I don't know what, so some inconsistencies and said that and that and that. And then in the Middle Ages or in the late antiquity, there are some people who thought about movements of Aristotle and then thought, okay, there's something missing, and created the theory of impetus. And then somehow via a series of people who learned by their teachers and somehow thought about the matter and came to another conclusion, somehow we came up until, say, to until Galileo's, and then we had a further development to Newton and so on, to Einstein, whatsoever. So we have a continuous history of physics. And at the beginning, at the end of this history, it's, to say so, still physics. They are not the same theory, obviously, yeah, but they are somehow connected via connections that can be understood, not only reconstructed. It's not only a knowledge that this was before the other, in a sense, and if we lose, to say so, the record, then we don't understand anything. We can't understand it. I think we can understand every scientific text, even if it's a little bit weird compared to ours, in a sense. And this also proves, to say so, the unity of the world, in a sense, and also the unity between, say, what we say spirit and matter, in a sense, yeah. So I think this would be my answer to Ken's remarks. He's here. I mean, okay, I'm going to talk with him later, perhaps. Anyway.
I don't know if he wants to reply. Or,
I don't know if he wants to reply. He may reply. No, here's a thanks. Okay.
Perhaps somehow connected with this previous thing. You said that the compromise with an independent existence of form,
yeah,
somehow is, I don't know. This is a true, an honest question. I'm not sure how strongly commit you with Platonism, and because I don't know, there are some forms of dispositionalism, for instance, about laws of nature that might also be compatible with the idea, but in a very different way. So I wonder if you could elaborate.
Okay. I mean, well, okay, if we are going to make commitments to history, I would say, okay, look, I'm obviously I'm sympathetic with Platonist view, and in fact I'm more sympathetic with I don't know if you don't know him, Plotinus. He was a Neoplatonist, and he tried to reconcile, to say so, this Aristotelian ideas and the Platonist ideas. So in a sense, okay, I would adhere to this Neoplatonic tradition. Let me put it so, okay? So in a way, I'm not in a sense in the tradition of say British empiricism whatsoever, in Hume's, or in logical empiricism. Okay, this is not, I would not adhere to this position, and still I'm not in this sense social constructivist. I mean, I can understand the social constructivist position, and I think they have very important insights in the structure of science as a social enterprise. Well, because as I said, all those things are somehow embedded in our life, so they are affected by other aspects of life. And so they provided or they provide us with important insights into this structure of science as a human enterprise in human society. Nevertheless, I don't think that it's say so epistemically what could it call it, fundamental for science. Okay, it's important in as a material cause, in a sense, as a material aspect of science embedded in the material of the human form of life, of human society. But it is not to say so what science makes to science. So this would be my position. Also, this is in the sense. So as I said, if you need a commitment to something, would say, okay, I'm a Neoplatonist, a Plotinist, something like that. Anyway, so that's the end of my life, to put it so.
So I don't know if you have any other question. ¿Tienen alguna pregunta que quieran traducir sobre el texto? Can close this. Well, sí.
Okay. How can these concepts about foundations of chemistry and epistemic objects of chemistry can be applied to the current chemical investigation? How this concept, in your opinion, can be applied to understand the current challenges of chemical investigation in chemicals synthesis and risk, cost or benefits of the use of chemical substances?
Did you hear?
Yes, I hear. Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. Well, okay. I don't think. I mean that they. Yeah, how can I say? There is no immediate, say so, benefit for them. I mean, chemists are chemists and don't know what they're doing, and they're doing it. I mean, okay, and they create their own. I mean, they know how to create their own theories and so on and so forth. So it's not a. I don't think that in this sense, philosophical reflection, also philosophical reflection on science, has this immediate impact on scientific research. In it, perhaps it would be important if, say so, research comes to a Kuhnian crisis. Okay, if there is, say so, as it has been in the past times. If there is a so yeah, how we call it, so to say, so a debate about fundamental approaches to chemistry. And today, I don't think that chemistry faces this kind of crisis of normal science. So chemistry is in this normal science mode, to say so. It has this research program that is somehow exploited and explored and exploited and explored, and it doesn't face this kind of crisis. Perhaps there are critical moments there. I mean, the critical moments, there are two, I think, one critical moment, in fact, I think. The biggest critical moment is the interface between chemistry and life. Obviously, we know that life supervenes on chemistry. Okay, needs chemistry in order to be life. Okay, that is, in an organism, chemical processes take place. We call it biochemistry, and so on and so forth. Okay. The problem is that obviously a living thing is just not an agglomeration of chemical processes. You don't put the chemical processes in a bottle and say, okay, we have a living thing. Okay. And in a sense, well, this is a little bit the problem. So the problem emerges perhaps in the interface between chemistry and biology, or when biology or scientists, I don't say that they do it, perhaps some people try what is called reduction, to reduce biology to chemistry, for example, or to reduce, as it's called, chemistry to mere physics or quantum mechanics. So at those boundaries is philosophical reflection in this sense important, and it shows, to say so, where the difference is, where the similarity is, and why the difference is more important than the similarity. Okay, as I say, living things somehow employ chemical processes, and they are, in a sense, chemical reactors in a very broad sense. But the important thing is not the similarity between a chemical reactor and a living thing, but the difference. The difference is that the chemical reactor is not a living thing. It cannot be, made into a living thing, and despite the fact that a living thing can be transformed into a mere chemical reactor when you kill it. I mean, if you kill an animal, okay, then you take the life out of it. What it remains is just a heap of chemical reactions that result in the dissolution of this body, of this corpse or so. Okay, so and at this point, perhaps what this kind of reflection could provide is to provide this criterion of the difference. Okay, and I think this is the important thing in in philosophy of science or whatsoever, to my opinion at least. Okay, you can't expect from a philosopher to say so direct consulting in how I'm going to proceed as a chemist. I think stupid, as I said, not even alone. I mean, okay, perhaps there are some ethical questions that a philosopher can also discuss with a scientist, but they are not, in a sense, okay, they are related perhaps to philosophy of science, maybe, okay, then perhaps there is some aspects that somehow connect those two domains, but they are still not directly connected, but indirectly, because both are enterprises in human society, and both, to say so, put the participants into special obligations, and like there is perhaps a responsibility of the scientists for, say, the results of her science, of their science. Also, perhaps there is also, in the same sense, perhaps, is a responsibility of the philosophers for the consequences of their philosophy. So, and I think the situation is then even, in a sense, similar, but okay. And perhaps then in this situation, even a chemist could give, to say so, to the philosopher a good consultation. Also, Catalina, excuse me, you have a...
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say that this presentation I really enjoyed it. It was, I studied chemistry before becoming a teacher, so this is really, I enjoy this time. I wanted to do like a follow-up from the last question, because the program we are at, it's a program it's a PhD in science education. So I would like to maybe not like to make sure of, but maybe think ahead about like what you have been telling us today, and think about what, like this delimitation, for example, for what is the nature of chemistry, or what is like the chemical realm of chemistry or nature of chemistry. And what do you think that might be taken in school, like that can be used like this? I know it's really complex. It was challenging for me to understand it, because I haven't read, I think the students that are now in the class in Chile, they read before a paper, before your presentation. I didn't get the chance to, and it was like really challenging, but I like gave like a lot of delimitation. It was really clear that can help to build upon those concepts in chemistry understanding. But what is maybe your reflection about that, like using this to learn chemistry in school or undergrad studies in chemistry?
Well, okay. At the beginning, the idea was that perhaps there should be such a kind of, say, impact to didactics of chemistry and so on. Well, my experience, my practical experience is that there was no interest. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. I mean, okay, there are somehow a little bit interest, but normally, for example, giving just an anecdote of my life, I was asked by chemistry students here in Leipzig to give a lecture there, or a series of lectures about those things. And I began, and at the end, in the middle, in the middle of the semester, suddenly they say to me, well, we can't come anymore to your lectures because our program has been rescheduled so that we can't attend your lectures. And I gave also a lecture in front of this chemical faculty. And what the professor said, okay, what are you saying to us is useless. Okay, so there is a kind of, I don't know. And if you look in, say, in didactics of chemistry, I mean, you can look at the University of Leipzig, they have a professorship of this. Okay, they are concerned with, well, okay, with those things like how I'm going to improve learning or trying to understand those things. And there have been professors or been people in didactic of chemistry who were interested in philosophical questions and tried to implement them in this didactic thing. But somehow, well, it depends. Okay, I mean, I would be happy if this could be implemented somehow in the teaching of science in schools or at the university. Would be very nice. But on the other hand, it seems that, as we say, there's only a Sunday interest in such things. I mean, like the people going on Sundays to the church and they are very, well, think about how they are brave they are and how they are faithful they are. And on Monday, they go and okay, back to life. And Sunday is forgotten, to say so, yeah, until next Sunday, in a sense, yeah. So, I mean, it's up to you, not up to me. I'm just thinking about it, and okay, it's my work, and I do it for the sake of science, in a sense, yeah. And I would be happy to discuss with you, and I could also discuss it with school children. I mean, there's no problem. I have done it. I mean, there was an interest. I have discussed it also with, say. Well, I was invited into a kind of research program somewhere, and I spoke about that and so on. People were happy, but it seems to me okay. And you come and talk, and then okay, you go away, and it's forgotten in a sense, yeah. So, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, didactic people or teachers and so on and so forth to implement such things in teaching. And also in the textbooks, to say so, textbooks, yeah. But I can't say anything about it. I mean, there is a tradition in such things. For example, in German pedagogics, there was a guy called Wagenschein and so on and so forth who somehow tried to implement it. But I can't say what's happening there. Yeah, it's a little bit. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but
no, it's okay.
More of this, yeah. I mean, as I said, I would be happy if someone would implement.
The thing I was thinking that chemistry is like a field of science that not much people value. It's not the most popular. For example, like biology has the most popularity than physics and then chemistry.
Yeah, okay, but the same holds also for biology, because if you come into biology with philosophical questions, then suddenly you, in a sense, you can easily be accused of being unscientific. For example, if you go into biology, yeah, and begin to discuss about the rationality, say, of Darwinian evolution, it's a philosophical problem. Okay, then perhaps you are accused of, say, creationism, then you are creationist whatsoever, and then nobody wants to do it, yeah? So says, okay, let's keep it, okay, don't discuss it, we have to teach what they say, and so on. And perhaps if students are interested, we can make a small work group and discuss some such items and so on and so forth. It's a problem also of fixed ideology, you know? So, and I think in modern schools, I don't know how's in Chile. I mean, perhaps you're more progressive than us. I don't know.
No.
Okay, I can't say anything. But I think, for example, in German schools, there's not so much interest or so, yeah? Or in Europe. I don't know. And when people think about, say about philosophy or say we have to teach philosophy at schools, they think about, say, more or less ethics. Okay, so or perhaps a kind of metaphysics that is so abstract that who cares about that? I mean, it has no, no connection to the lives of the people. And one has to try to create this connection. I mean, it would be an interesting task. Okay, it's not mine in a sense, because, well, I don't have the opportunity. I'm sorry to say so. Yeah.
Well, thank you, though. Thank you.
Yo.
Le podría hacer en español, pero un agradecimiento así como muy sencillo, pero porque aunque no lo crea, él lo que publicó en el Foundations of Chemistry sobre la idea de esta defensa del argumento del reduccionismo en la física y la química, al menos para mí, como lo fue una cuestión como muy...
La defensa del reduccionismo.
Sí, como para agradecerle porque el haber levantado esa figura de la filosofía de la química, como lo hizo con Cherry, con Olimpia, igual que tiene mucho impacto, aunque él no lo crea, y por lo menos para mí esa idea fue muy potente en su momento, entonces como también agradecérselo porque no habría filosofía de la química en buena parte. Sí,
one of the students here wants to thank you for your work as a philosopher of chemistry. He is a chemist, and your work have impacted him, and so he wanted to thank you. I mean, despite of what you just said, he wanted to thank you for your work.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I will take this opportunity to close this session. And again, thank you for coming here and for this for tremendous talk and the opportunity to speak. I wish we could invite you to Chile sometime. If everything goes fine and we get some financial, then I don't know. We will call
a Pontifical University. You can ask, the Vatican, perhaps.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.
Okay, thank you very much, and bye-bye. Yeah.
Gracias. Cheers.
Goodbye.
Chao a todos allá, chao en Chile, que estén bien.
Chao.